Hi, so I want to do something a little different this week. People have questions generally because of all the stuff we talk about on the podcast. So we're going to do a Q&A episode with you, the true stars of the podcast, the viewer and listener. Do you see how manipulative I've gotten? You see what showbiz has done to me? It's all pure manipulation and gaslighting. God knows the most important people on the show are not the listener. It's the Jerry Seinfelds, and it's the people that bring in numbers.
Right.
All right, let's do a Q&A episode. I don't know how many we have. We've got hundreds of questions. I'll just see which ones I can come with a good answer for. I haven't even read a lot of these. I haven't read any of them. Let's go. LFG. Death of an alcoholic family member. How did you deal with the death of an alcoholic and abusive parent? Firstly, at the time of loss, and secondly, in the present day. Is there any advice or strategies you would offer to your past self to better handle the situation? So my dad was an abusive alcoholic, more or less. I mean, I say more or less because, honestly, my family doesn't like it when I say that. My mom, especially, my family, brothers and sisters, some of them. There's some disagreement. Are you sure that he was? Would you call him abusive? And meanwhile, it's like, yeah, he beat you up. I saw it. So my dad died, didn't include me in his will. Very painful. And I began 3 mics when I was writing that and the last mic segment.
So back to my dad. I almost couldn't get a one-man show license unless I did a full monologue about my dad.
The intention was like revenge. Like, I'm going to make my dad look like a real piece of shit. Right? And then as slowly over time, and I end up using this line in the show of like, what do I owe him? And I'm also lucky in that I kind of asked myself before he died, what did I owe him? And I thanked him for it. I thanked my dad was a tax lawyer. 10 kids, it doesn't matter how much money you make, you're going to be poor. At a certain point, we shed some kids, and my dad had a tax lawyer salary. So I got to grow up. I don't know if it would be like privileged, but I definitely got to grow up. We had big houses, and I started working when I was 11 or 12. So like another line from a show that Derek DeGaudio wrote. Both my parents were born during the Great Depression, and they were nice enough to bring it with them. Like, it was Depression era values around the house in almost every sense. So I think I was able to thank my dad for putting me in a socioeconomic position for my childhood. And so it was like a decent socioeconomic position. And also the way I was the youngest of 10, nothing was impossible for me. This is the privilege of, I would say, of my life. Youngest of 10, and my older brothers and sisters, I got to observe them, and they would bring me to their workplace. My brother Joey, my oldest brother Joey, was a caddy on the PGA Tour. Caddy for Craig Stadler. He was in 1982 or 3. Craig was number 1 on the money list. So I got to go to PGA Tour things. I got to know a famous professional golfer. I got access to behind the rope, so to speak. My brother Kevin, comedian. So I go from like being around, not around, but like a little bit of access to PGA Tour. Then I get access to stand-up comedy. My brother Kevin's a comedian. I get to go to New York every couple months for a weekend and go to the Improv. And it's Kevin, my brother Kevin, David Tell, who just started doing stand-up, Ray Romano, who is probably 2 or 3 years into comedy. And then I hear about a guy's wearing a 40 acres and a mule hat. And I knew Spike Lee was a filmmaker. 40 Acres and a Mule is his film company. This great comedian Warren Hutcherson, who is a great writer as well. He's wearing a hat. I'm in high school. I'm like, where'd you get the hat? Spike Lee. I just get to. It's a domino effect, kind of from my parents' choices. Whether it's my dad going to night school. By the way, my mom told me a few weeks ago my dad went to law school at night, and he had 3 or 4 kids. So like, couldn't have been easy. My brother Tommy worked at the Chicago Stadium and Wrigley Field, so I get to go to Bulls games all the time. I get to go to Cubs games all the time. I get to know the staff of Wrigley Field And I would go by myself around age 10 to Wrigley Field, take the train, and they would just let me in. And my dad was abusive. I guess you got to take the bitter with the sweet. So the bitter was my dad's abusive and narcissistic and drinker. But he had a bunch of kids, and a lot of them really, not even really, absolutely affected the trajectory of my life. Kevin, especially, like I didn't want to forget Thomas, but like I went to NYU film school and then got into comedy from there because of Kevin. And now he didn't get me in NYU, but by the way, my parents were able to pay for NYU, which is $25,000 at that point. I mean, I think I paid $5 of it, but like from caddying and whatever. So I would look at your parent in a holistic way, meaning take it all, look at the upside as well as the downside. And I also realized in one of my ayahuascas that I have basically my father's hardware and my mother's software. It's an oversimplification, but like my dad had a good brain. He's a tax lawyer. So like, good structured brain, and my mother is a kind, interesting human being and very empathetic. So like when I'm good at listening, people say I'm good at listening. Didn't get it from my dad. I'll say that. So overall, I would just suggest looking at the whole person and not just the abusive parts or the shitty parts or whatever. It's hard because we're kind of trained in no therapy says, tell me about the good parts of your life or your there's no positive version of trauma. There's no like, yeah, my dad was abusive, but also like, I met Michael Jordan when I was 11 or 12. You know what I mean? Or like I got access to comedy clubs, or I got to go to NYU and working at a comedy club, and then the only guy my age is Dave Chappelle and Louis and whatever. Like that, there's no therapy for that. But so you kind of have to do it on your own and take it all for what it actually is. Like it's easy to feel sorry for yourself, but in some ways, and I've talked about this endlessly, like writing down in having a gratitude checklist of like, the shit's going really well and my life is kind of incredible. So that would be my suggestion for you, sir. G'day, Neal. Recently had the pleasure of introducing my wife to your work via Blocks, the podcast. Can you please solve the mystery of the dings on the potty? Thanks, Luke. Luke, you may have watched the podcast, in which case, when the block comes up, you see it written out behind the guest, thanks to the great work of Will Hagle, my producer. But because at least half of the people listen to it, I thought it would be good to have some cue that this was it's a bit like the ticker or the sidebar. Remember when they started putting sidebars on everything, on every ESPN show, every CNN show, every Fox show? I think Fox may have started it, God forbid. And then Colbert started doing it and whatever. So I like organization I have a grid mind, and I like laying things out so that people can understand, oh, that's a block, and they're probably going to talk about this for a while. And the ding is just a good game show ding. It's your stock ding. We tried other ones. They didn't. We try stuff, but it just kind of is what it's going to be. We've turned it down in the mix because it's a little jarring at first. I have gotten complaints that people's dogs think that somebody's at the door. I don't know how to tell you guys this. I'm not making this shit for fucking dogs. I'm making it for people. And it's fairly popular. Ding that, Will. Ding a ding, and then put fairly popular behind me and use it as the thumbnail. Great. Thanks for your question, Luke. Hi, Neal. I follow your podcast and think it's great. I especially enjoyed the men who talk about their blocks. That's pretty much most of them. It's hard to get men to even talk sometimes, smiley face. My questions for you are, in your opinion, what treatment for depression do you think was the most effective of what you tried? And as a result of what you went through, were you ultimately able to go off medication? Just curious. My goal is to eventually go off meds. Thank you, Terry. I've done Zoloft. I've done transcranial magnetic stimulation. I did a lot of talk therapy, which was, I believe, Freudian talk therapy. I've done Prozac. I've done somatic therapy, which was kind of just shaking, bodily shaking, and ayahuasca, DMT, and MDMA. Okay. So I would say that most of them have some value. I would say, let's say all of them have some value. The issue with therapy and mental health treatment is you don't know what's going to work. It's kind of a grab bag. In fact, with the antidepressants, they don't even really know why they work. They can see what they do, but they don't even know exactly why that helps. Okay, so I mean, Zoloft was helpful. I started taking that when I was like 24, and I remember feeling a difference, and I remember people noticing a difference. I remember telling Chappelle, like, I don't want to dance, but I understand why people would want to. That was my take on Zoloft. It was like, oh, this is okay. I can sort of see in the distance, I can see some sort of pleasure or enjoyment. I have dysthymic depression, which is a low-grade depression where it's hard to experience joy. My face still has it, even though I sort of overcome it. My face still thinks it's 1998. So Zoloft was helpful for me. Transcranial magnetic stimulation was helpful for me. That was another one where I think I noticed a difference. I forgot to mention EMDR. That was helpful for me. I don't know how much. In retrospect, I'm like, maybe it was 5-10%. At one point, I thought it was 15 or 20. Talk therapy, which I'm going to do an ad for. A friend of mine has created a website where you input your issues and they tell you what the most effective types of therapy are for your issues. The website is called Therapy Path. It's therapy-path.com. So go on there. It's like $3. You fill out, you answer questions for 8-10 minutes, and then they'll, via all the research available, will tell you the most effective modalities for your specific problem. Okay, so I've done all that. I've done a ton of different talk therapies. I've done a ton of different medications. Fortunately or unfortunately, the most effective one for me was DMT. Now, I mentioned in the Blocks Netflix show that it broke my brain. It did. I did 5-MeO DMT, like Bufo alvarius. It's like the nuclear bomb of psychedelics, and I think I went too far. It slowly came back together over a year and a half. It was pretty scary for about 3 days, where I would describe myself as pre-psychotic. DMT sends you into the netherworld, for lack of it, especially 5-MeO sends you off into the netherworld. I got back in the normal 25 minutes. You know, you get blasted off and then you slowly settle back down. For a week, it was cool. And then a week later, after I did it on November 1st, 2021. November 8th, 2021, I started having flashbacks. There was a day where I was sort of in the world. I was in New York. I went on a date, and half of me was also in the netherworld. And if that sounds scary, you're underestimating it. It's the most. I literally had the thought I wouldn't wish this on Hitler. So, and you guys know my feelings about Hitler. I've been pretty clear on this podcast about my feelings about Hitler. But over time, it healed me in very major ways.
I would argue that it got the trauma out of my body. I did a bunch of ayahuasca prior to that, which I think loosened up the trauma. The DMT flushed it out, and then MDMA, starting in 2023,
finish the job, so to speak. So, and today I'm on no meds. And I'd also like to say, I don't think that it's better that I'm on no meds. I don't think there's any shame in being on medication. I don't think people that were born diabetic, that they have to take insulin, I'm not like these. I don't think they're weak motherfuckers or people with tennis elbow or people with whatever. Name the malady. I don't think taking medication to counter it is in any way shameful. People with depression die prematurely. They die earlier. Their life expectancy is shorter than people without. If you can extend it via medication, do it. My issue was more the medications kind of stopped working. So I called in the Reddit crew and we got onto we started doing ayahuasca and did that number of times, probably 15 to 20 times, then 5-MeO DMT, then MDMA. And my intention for now is to take MDMA a couple times a year. It becomes a God connection, which I first experienced on ayahuasca, and then a lot on DMT. It was too much on DMT, and then I get a 4 or 5 hour window on MDMA. And the great thing about all these modalities that I'm talking about now is you can take it back with you. You remember, it's more in your body. It's really easy to draw from minute to minute. So what I'm saying is everyone's different. But that's my arc. Could have said Journey, refused. We bleep Journey on this show. So I would say follow your own path on this. Again, therapypath.com, therapy-path.com. See what happens. I mean, just if you don't like a medication, there were medications. I remember one of them made me like just feel Zoloft at a certain point started making me feel nauseous, and I think I upped my dosage 30%, and at that dosage I would get nauseous around sundown every day, and I would puke almost every day out at sundown. Now, I'm such a crazy person. I thought it was because I was eating sugar-free Lifesavers, but it was because I was taking more of a psychiatric medication. So just pay attention to what's happening to you, to your mood, to your body, and go from there. But I don't think there's any right or wrong way to do this, other than if it's dangerous or harmful. But now also I'm contradicting myself, because the DMT was dangerous and harmful in the short term, but helpful in the long term. So there's no one piece of advice for any of this. So thank you, Terry, and I'm sorry I couldn't be more direct. Next question. Autism. Neal, as it seems you were a searcher, therapy, ayahuasca, etc. I wonder why you seem to dismiss autism. The way you say ayahuasca changed your understanding. Discovering autism was that for me. I don't know that I do dismiss autism. Maybe you're aware of something that I'm not aware of. I took the test for autism. It was so fucking expensive. I think the lady ripped me off. But I took the test in early 2023 for autism. The lowest score, I believe, on the spectrum is between 26 and 50 on this test. And I scored a 26. So 26 being the lowest you can be on the spectrum. So I am technically autistic. I think what you may be saying with that it changed your understanding, it can change your understanding of yourself, meaning you understand why you behave in certain ways, which it can be revelatory, and it'll take a lot of self-judgment away if you're like, oh, I'm doing this because my brain is set up in a certain way. The thing I will say that I am dismissive of with autism, but not with other people, with myself, is I don't know what's what. Meaning I don't know why, if I'm an asshole to an editor, or if I'm an asshole to Will, the producer of the show, or if I'm gruff, or if I'm me and Bijan, my editor, who we just edited a comedy special for a friend, and he was saying that he was basically like, you're a little intense, right? And I am a little intense. And I was like, he's like, you come in here and it's like, and he edited Chappelle's show, and he was huge on Chappelle's show. Bijan Shams is his name. He told me to reshoot Charlie Murphy's interview, and I did, and he was right. It's the best note I've ever gotten. The Charlie Murphy, Rick James interview. He's standing because I filmed it once, and Charlie was sitting, and he was low energy. And then Bijan was like, it was better when the way you told it to me. You should reshoot this. And it hurt my feelings, but he was right.
When he's coming for us, came. Wow! Caught him with the front.
So, but Bijan we had a painful conversation a few days ago, and basically saying like, you're too intense. As much as I work on being a better person, I'm still falling short, right? Or being kinder, being just easier to deal with. And I mentioned autism in the conversation, and I don't know if that's a dodge or not. I don't know if I'm saying, well, I'm autistic, so I can't be nice. I don't want to let myself off that easily. So I know what you mean, and I'd rather try to get better and be kinder and as a person, and not give myself an out by saying like I can't, because I would like to think that I can. Not because I'm so low on the autism spectrum, but like, who knows if I take the test again, if I'm even on the spectrum, whatever. But I don't dismiss it. It's just one of those things of like, within myself, I would like to just pretend I don't have it and see if I can overcome the things that I consider autistic. By the way, there's a lot of upside to autism. I believe like when I say I have a organized brain, I just think it's autism. I think my joke writing ability, which is basically pattern recognition, I can recognize patterns that other people can't recognize. I'm betting that's autism. If I go, the sun is basically the cops for white people. It's really funny, but it's also, it's grid brain. You know what I mean? It's like the beautiful mind shit. So there's a ton of upside to autism, but I don't know what's what. And the stuff I like, I'm going to focus on. The stuff I don't like, I'm going to try to overcome. I hope that satisfies your question, because I don't want to be dismissive, because I don't think it's fair to dismiss it in other people. And you also will acknowledge that a lot of people are just saying they're autistic when they're just an asshole in the last couple of years, because it's just like, oh, I have ADD, so I can't text you back. Go fuck yourself. Not you, but the others. This one is called Sexual Guilt. This might be too taboo for your show, but the thing that makes me feel like there's something wrong with me and that I'm alone in the world is guilt over literally any sexual feelings I've ever had. P.S. I'm a straight male. I feel like the LGBTQ plus community has tried to claim that society only tries to make people with alternative sexualities feel shame about their sexual behavior. But I think the reality is that shame is probably a normal part of the human condition whenever sex is involved. Still, I can't help but feel like I'm particularly disadvantaged here. A lot of men, quote, seem to enjoy crushing puss with zero consequences for their spiritual or mental health, but every time I hook up with a girl, I can't help but feel like I'm doing something wrong. The fact that women can enjoy and consent to sex doesn't make me feel any less like it's not in their interest to sleep around and that I'm taking advantage of them when I get laid. It's gotten so bad that I have sabotaged some potentially good relationships with women because I can't even bring myself to act or talk sexy, even when I know they like me, and even though I feel confident in my attractiveness because I'm a healthy and independent man with a good job. This guy listens to a lot of R&B music. So what's up, Neal? Is a little bit of guilt and shame around sex good, or am I being too sensitive? P.S. Again, my dad wasn't really around very much. Vince from New York. Vince, that's a great question, and I think I can definitely relate in that I think about my adult take on sex, and I was almost always wrong about it. Meaning, like, looking back, I'm like, I was almost always wrong. By the way, I'm closer to where you are now, and I think that's wrong. I think, my approach now is wrong. I don't know what the right way for a heterosexual man to approach sex is. I really don't, because I read a great book called The Case Against the Sexual Revolution by Louise Perry. Read it
year and a half ago. She basically is saying that the sexual revolution didn't really work for women. It basically espoused that women should have sex the way men have it, which is kind of for sport or to get off or whatever. And she's like, it didn't work for women because in essence that women are built differently and it sort of hurts their feelings. Sport fucking hurts women's. I mean, again, I'm paraphrasing, but like that's kind of the overarching thing, and according to her, and that women should approach it more in a weird, not again puritanical way or a pro-social way, which is for procreation or for pleasure with men that they're in a committed relationship with. I kind of think she's right now. But I spent so much of my life trying to get laid, quote, for ego, for like needing to a normal human male sexual appetite. Let's call it once a day, give or take. There is so much collateral damage with that once a day thing. If you're not in a committed relationship, then it's either masturbate, sex worker, or abstinence, I guess, none of which are great options. Some are literally illegal, but masturbation it wouldn't be my first choice. But my first choice would be with a human woman. And if I don't happen to be aligned with somebody romantically at that point or spiritually at that point in a relationship, it's hard. And even when you're in a relationship with a woman, they don't always want to have sex. So, and when they do, it's for totally different reasons than you. I've only recently come around to having sex for emotional connection or continue. Well, not like there was never an emotional connection, but as a expression of our emotional connection. I would get windows of it, but now it's very consistent. So I understand your shame or self-judgment around it, because all the messaging now for most of my life was like, yeah, get laid. And now it's, you're a disgusting pig for wanting to get laid and you're victimizing women. And then there's also a thing of, I mean, this is just messaging as I'm interpreting it. There's also a thing of the revision, if a woman has an unsatisfactory sexual experience, what happens, it's because of the man. A lot of times it seems like, and I would argue it's like anything. Sometimes it's just not great. It's just not an experience. It doesn't make me a callous pig. It just makes me like I wasn't good that time, or I didn't know how to make you have an orgasm, or I didn't. So I don't know. The truth is, I don't know how to answer this. Maybe, all right, here's advice. Accept some of your humanity. And I think a lot of times in my life, my horniness overrode my empathy. And it sounds like your empathy is overriding your horniness. I think getting them in closer proportion might be the right answer. Because basically what I'm saying was I knew it wasn't the best for my sexual partners at times, but I didn't care because I was too horny to care. Neal Brennan, too horny to care. So I feel like I don't look great with this answer. I don't look like an ally, but I think this is a huge test for men. This is like a huge area of like, how are you going to do this ethically for men? And the truth is, I don't know. It's a bit like eating animals for food. I'm not calling women animals. I am calling them food though. No, I'm saying, how do I do this ethic? I mean, like they say Native Americans like sort of honor the ceremony. I mean, I would say put some dignity in the ceremony. I don't know how to answer this question, is what I'm trying to say, is because I don't know the right answer. I happen to agree with Louise Perry that for the most part, the last 50 years of sexual liberation had an upside, but I also think it had a massive downside. And I genuinely don't know which it had more of. Because I think, to your point earlier of like, sex was stigmatized in the gay community for so long by the church and by society. And then they get to now have pride in their in their sexuality and their sexual choices, and because of the stigma and the stigma with heterosexual sex has sort of, it got better and then it got worse, and now it's sort of, I think it's always in flux. And I think you're probably right to just check in with yourself and see, like, how is this right? Am I doing this right? And the truth is, you probably will never have a consistent answer until you're in a committed relationship and do it for spiritual reasons, which is just a very high bar, admittedly, when you kind of have to do it every day. I don't have any answers, Vince. And I get why your dad left, because you're impossible. Talking about family in art. Family is a big block. What do you do when speaking, writing, acting, singing, etc.? Your truth will most definitely negatively affect your close family, but not telling your truth means creative death to your soul? Do you say fuck it and do it anyway and face the consequences? Or do you try to water down your craft to save them the embarrassment or discomfort? Sometimes I talk too much or in a too revealing a way about my family. And I've also evolved about how I feel about it in terms of, in 3 mics I was kind of angrier, and even Blocks, the Netflix, I was pretty negative about the family. And I've now, in 3 mics, as I've spoken about on this episode, I got more charitable about my dad, even working out the last monologue. And with Blocks on Netflix, I think I wasn't that charitable, or I was a little self-pitying or whatever. I just have less self-pity about my experience growing up, and I'm more generous. I don't think people want to see you flame your family. I don't think people want to see you flame your people that are supposed to be your loved ones or whatever. I think you can kind of say more with not saying things. And as much as there's a premium put on my truth, I have a lot of truths. I'm betting you have a lot of truths too. I could even interpret my own life 10 different ways about what it meant and how it even occurred. There's different interpretations. I think get a feeling across without getting specifics across. And I deal with that a lot with even with stand-up. All the people that I talked about in Crazy Good in terms of the comedians who are, John Mulaney told me to tell you he's an alcoholic, Lenny, all those people. I send it to Ellen DeGeneres, Kevin Hart, Chris. I sent the clips to Rogan. I sent them clips of it before, and if they had objected, I wouldn't have put it on. I would have been pissed, but I wouldn't have put it on. Because I think people have a right to privacy, kind of more than I have a right to my truth as it affects them in a public setting. I just think a right to privacy is just a huge thing that people have, and I've been asked to write books about my life, and I've started to kind of think about it, and then I just go, the only thing people are going to care about in a casual way is the gossipy stuff. So I kind of just can't write one, and I don't feel bad I don't get to write a book. I just feel like I don't think people could handle it. Would just become quotes about people I've worked with. So I wouldn't do that, and I don't feel like I'm neglecting my truth. My truth is being thwarted. I have plenty of truths, whereas I think people only have one privacy. So that would be, I would just say write about something else, or take the feeling you have about these people and try to channel it in a different way. Good answer, Neal. Thanks. Letting go of people. Learning and maintaining boundaries is obviously very important, but when many folks in your life are not on the learning, healing, and on the growth process you are, it makes it tough to keep them in your life. Of course, you can/should set boundaries and enforce them, but over time it becomes kind of exhausting if it's one-sided.
What's your process for letting go of the folks that are not willing to grow? How and where do you find more like-minded folks? And without finding a new circle of people, won't you slip into loneliness/depression? That's a great question. It is like it's sort of I'm not going to call it the silent killer of growth, is that you end up having to omit people from your life. It's a balance, obviously, between self-care and how much grace should you show people. What's the final straw? When does a boundary become a wall? And the truth of it is, I don't know. I think people said a boundary. If you want to make a wall, a boundary, put a door in it. But it's a good analogy. I think. I truthfully, I don't know, and I don't know if I have the right balance. I've cut people out of my life, or not even that severely, just said like, I don't think it works anymore, or whatever, or you grow apart, or you just don't text each other very often. Honestly, I think it's a calculation of not like what are they bringing to my life, but I think friendships and relationships have to be reciprocal. So if it's not reciprocal, can you deal with it? Can you deal with like their explanation of why it's not reciprocal? I have a friend who doesn't text me back very often, and or they'll bail on plans or whatever. For some reason, it doesn't bother me. I just am like, because I'm kind of like, oh, I'm dying to get my plans canceled. It still feels weirdly reciprocal. On paper, it's probably not, but it doesn't affect me in the same way other people doing that would, because we don't really work together, so that makes it easier. There's no professional, you think you're better than me voice in my head. I will say I'm surprised by how little I miss some folks I've cut out. It doesn't mean I regret having been friends with them, but I think it's like there's a utility to relationships, and I'm not talking about like work or whatever. I'm just talking about like emotional utility of like they're providing you with something and you're providing them with something. The truth is, I don't know. I think you just have to find out. I recently was thinking about cutting somebody out, and then was like, no, I don't want to. They're worth the trouble or the hurt or whatever. But other people I've cut out and haven't missed them at all. And then, and my girlfriend and I talk about this a lot, I'm not really an extrovert. I like one-on-one conversations, and she's similar. But like, so should we make more connections? Should you know the people on your block? Do you know what I mean? Like, that used to be a thing in the 50s and 60s. Like, a lot of human history was like the village. And then they say there's studies that people that are more connected to their family, their community, live longer and are more fulfilled. There are times where I'm like, that might not apply to me. I think I may not need that. But unfortunately, by the time I figure out that it did apply to me, I'm going to be dead. So like, it really is a balance. And I would just say, like, have boundaries for yourself and maybe give people a door to walk through if they should so decide. But I don't think ultimatums work. I think you just have to see what people do naturally. But I've also been corrected by people in terms of my behavior and didn't resent them for it. So, and I feel like I've done the same, where I was like, hey, you need to text me, or and they've corrected their behavior as it pertains to me. And there wasn't like a hangover or like the feeling of embarrassment of like, you're only doing this because I told you. Like, people are pretty forgetful, including yourself. So it's a balance. Do your best. I really don't know. You're on your own. Next question. Feeling on autopilot. The block that makes me feel alone, alienated, and weird is that I am often on autopilot. By autopilot, I mean I feel like I'm going through life without thinking, feeling, or making decisions. When I realize I am having a thought or a feeling and I can step back and look at it as opposed to just going along with it, I suddenly feel like I have control. How do you deal with that? If it's just a matter of being more present and aware, how do you do that? I read somewhere it's the two types of sort of consciousness we exist in a lot of times are in exploration and then just information management. Our human brains tend to automatize everything, where it just becomes like, yeah, I got to go through this door and I got to do it, and you don't think about it. And somebody pointed out that if you can stay in an exploratory way, an exploratory sort of consciousness of like thinking that everyone says like live every day like it's your last. There's something to be said for living it like it's your first, so that everything is novel. Obviously, you're going to be faking it, but at least approaching it from that MO can be interesting. It's dealing with my girlfriend's kid. It's interesting. Like they say you can relive through them, but when you see someone experience something for the first time, you can remember more what it was like the first time you experienced it, and you can almost do it. You almost relive it like in a new way. So I think like slowing things down and not being so reactive, or not just knowing like how you react to things is the right way to react, or like, well, I have the groove in my head. I know what my response to this is, which is like aggravation or annoyance or even laughter or whatever, and questioning it on a fundamental basis. Like, how do I feel about this? It's not easy to do. And it's something that, like, clearly if I'm espousing it, it's something I'd like to follow it more often. But slowing things down and trying to experience it for the first time, I think even eating. It's like, instead of just like, just like, what does this taste like? What's the mouthfeel? A disgusting word, one of the worst. But what's it like? What is it? What's bread? Just being a kind of like stoner thoughts in a weird way, but you can, it's a nice little like restart for how you approach things. So yeah, so that's my answer for that. This is about loneliness and relationships. Hi, Neal. I'm Mahmout from Turkey. You're not just my favorite comedian, but you're also my favorite person, so you can probably imagine how fucked up I am emotionally. Smiley face. Mahmout. Now, here's my question. At 32 years old, I've been in a few relationships, and currently I am willingly alone. Surprisingly, I don't feel lonely at all. In fact, I'm quite happy with myself. It seems like I have a harmonious relationship with life, and everything feels more than sufficient. It appears that I'm doing all right. However, everyone keeps telling me you'll regret it in the future. You're missing your chance to marry and have children. I'm feeling incredibly conflicted about what to do. Should I continue as I am because I am happy now, or should I actively seek a relationship to avoid potential loneliness in the future? Here's what I would say. You have to risk following your instinct. You have to just do it. You have to adhere to what feels good and know that in the future, like, you may regret it, but you're going to regret it now if you try to force your way in a relationship. Like, I had no hopes that I was ever going to be in a relationship. I was content to not be in a committed relationship. And I guess I waited too long or whatever, but I waited a long ass time. And I think all the time with my girlfriend, I'm so glad I waited, because if I had tried to jump the gun, they wouldn't have worked. So you have to accept that there is a risk in your decision, but also most of the people that are telling you that you need to shack up or you need to pair up or whatever, they're going to get divorced. And we're not even going to talk about how satisfying that can be in a petty way. But a lot of them get divorced. And anyhow, so you just have to wait it out. But it is trying. And wait it out. You'll also realize that no one really cares. They're just saying it because they don't know what else to say, and they want you to be like them, and misery loves company, and people love safety in numbers, et cetera, et cetera. But just wait it out, because if to not wait it out, there's a chance that you either will continue to be satisfied until you die, or you'll be satisfied to a certain point, and then you'll change your mind, and then you're only 32. It's not like, I think you're a dude, so bro, you could wait. You could give it another 50 years and still have kids. So don't do things because other people are pressuring you, even though that's kind of what the Blocks Netflix was about, like feeling pressured. But I can't make this show, but I'd love to say, like, I was right. I was right to wait. And any relationship I would have gotten into would have been the wrong one. And the one I'm in now is the right one, I believe. And if that changes, I'll get out of it, and vice versa. My girlfriend and I have a commitment to self-interest. Like, if you don't want to be here, get out of here. So, and also, like I said, no one's actually thinking about you. I think this is as good a time as any. We'll wrap with this question. Will play us out with Nobody's Mad at You, and then the theme song, which is by electric guest, my friend Asa Taccone, who did the theme song for 3 Mics. He did the outro song, and he gives me songs that he hasn't released, and he's one of my favorite musicians. And so thanks for joining me on our first Q&A, and we'll do more soon. And Will, let's leave with Nobody's Mad at You, followed by Asa's song, the electric guest song.
Nobody's mad at you, nobody's mad at you. You're having a private experience. Nobody's mad at you, nobody's mad at you. Nobody really gives a fuck.